I just posted the week 1 check-in. Let's keep it pushing with this week 2, okay? So week 2 was all about recovering a sense of identity. And I'm just going to read, and we'll see if I make many comments during the reading of this. Okay. But it is kind of long, so let's just get into it, okay? So week 2, just a heads up for this. This week addresses self-definition as a major component of creative recovery. Self-definition. Wait, okay. I really hope you watch the check-in before reading this or before listening to this, because I have a feeling that they might coincide a lot. And I might reference it a lot. Okay. So you may find yourself drawing new boundaries and staking out new territories as your personal needs, desires, and interests announce themselves. The essays and tools are aimed at moving you into your personal identity, a self-defined you. Okay. So, sorry, I'm shaking the screen apparently. The first section of week 2 is called Going Sane, which strong start. Okay. So we're covering a sense of identity, going sane. Trusting our creativity is new behavior for many of us. It may feel quite threatening initially, not only to us, but also to our intimates. We may feel and look erratic. This erraticism is a normal part of getting unstuck, pulling free from the muck that has blocked us. It is important to remember that at first flush, going sane feels just like going crazy. There's a recognizable ebb and flow to the process of recovering our creative selves. As we gain strength, so will some of the attacks of self-doubt. I was talking about this. I was talking about a leap of faith in the check in for week 1 and how a lot of it for me had to do with reinforming or rebuilding these paths in my own neural pathways that kind of went against the self-doubt and more so was a leap of faith. Anyway, we'll continue. This is normal, and we can deal with these types of attacks when we see them as symptoms of recovery. Common self-attacks are, okay, so I did okay this week, but it's just a temporary thing. Okay, so I got the morning pages done. I probably did them wrong. Okay, so now I need to plan something big and do it right away. Who am I kidding? I'll never recover. Not right away. Not ever. These attacks are groundless, but very convincing to ourselves. Buying into them enables us to remain stuck and victimized. Just as a recovering alcoholic must avoid the first drink, the recovering artist must avoid taking the first think. For us, the think is really self-doubt. I don't think this is any good. These attacks can come from either internal or external sources. We can neutralize them once we recognize them as a sort of creative virus. Affirmations are a powerful antidote for self-hate, which commonly appears under the mask of self-doubt. Talked a lot about affirmations in week 1 as well, because she has us do these basic principles, and they are affirmations. And even in the first week, a lot of them, when we were recognizing the blurps that would happen in our head by our inner critic, she would have us write an affirmation that kind of changed the narrative of this blurb that would happen. So anyway, early in our creative recovery, self-doubt can lure us into self-sabotage. A common form of this sabotage is showing someone our morning pages. Remember, the morning pages are private and are not intended for the scrutiny of well-meaning friends. One newly unblocked writer showed his morning pages to a writer friend who was still blocked. When she critiqued them, he blocked them again. Do not let your self-doubt turn into self-sabotage. So the next section she calls Poisonous Playmates. And I'm just going to get right into it. Creativity flourishes when we have a sense of safety and self-acceptance. Your artist, like a small child, is happiest when feeling a sense of security. As our artist's protective parent, we must learn to place our artist with safe companions. Toxic playmates can capsize our artist growth. Not surprisingly, the most poisonous playmates for us as recovering creatives are people whose creativity is still blocked. Our recovery threatens them. As long as we are blocked, we often felt that it was arrogance and self-will to speak of ourselves as creative artists. The truth is that it was self-will to refuse to acknowledge our creativity. Of course, this refusal had its payoffs. We could wonder and worry about our arrogance instead of being humble enough to ask help to move through our fear. We could fantasize about art instead of doing the work. By not asking the great creator's help with our creativity and by not seeing the great creator's hand in our creativity, we could proceed to righteously ignore our creativity and never have to take the risk of fulfilling it. Your blocked friends may still be indulging in all of these comforting self-delusions. If they are having trouble with your recovery, they are still getting a payoff from remaining blocked. I think this is so important to hear. And in fact, the friend that I'm doing this with, we talked a lot about kind of just like keeping this quiet, even though I'm sharing this with the world on YouTube, more or less keeping the recovery quiet from like kind of our most well-meaning friends, because I think a lot of times it is like well-meaning that like there's a lot of like love from a lot of people. It's usually the people that are closest to you. When they see you changing, it is scary for them because change usually scares people. Change means the unknown, and if people haven't dealt with or don't like the unknown in their own lives, then it can be really scary for them to see it happening in your life. And most of the time, those people just want to help or protect you. And then you end up having to kind of soothe their ego while you're soothing your own, because your own ego is telling you to stay safe and don't do this, you know? And now you have to worry about soothing somebody else's ego in the same process, and it's already hard enough to do yours. So a lot of times it does end up just being easier to kind of do the work, maybe not by yourself, but like, yeah, maybe not share it with all of your blocked friends, no matter how well-meaning they are. I'm going to keep going. All right. Perhaps they still get an anorectic high from the martyrdom of being blocked, or they still collect sympathy and wallow in self-pity. Perhaps they still feel smug, thinking about how much more creative they could be than those who are out there doing it. These are toxic behaviors for you now. Do not expect your blocked friends to applaud your recovery. That's like expecting your best friends from the bar to celebrate your sobriety. How can they, when their own drinking is something they want to hold on to? Blocked friends may find your recovery disturbing. This is the core of it. You getting unblocked raises the unsettling possibility that they too could become unblocked and move into authentic creative risk rather than bench-sitting cynicism. Be alert to subtle sabotage from friends. You cannot afford their well-meaning doubts right now. This is what I was talking about. You cannot afford their well-meaning doubts right now. Their doubts will reactivate your own. Be particularly alert to any suggestion that you have become selfish or different. These are red alert words for us. They are attempts to leverage us back into our old ways for the sake of someone else's comfort, not our own. So the reason I started talking about this, even before I realized like what she was fully going to talk about, was I've experienced this before. I've experienced this many times in my life. And I actually kind of, I went through a process of healing versions of this. And mind you, the way that healing works is cyclical. So the healing that is going to happen, since I've done week 2, that I'll talk about, you know, how this is addressed in week 2. And we'll get into the task, okay? But, you know, so I'm not saying that I'm not still healing from this in some ways. Healing is cyclical. So of course this can come back up, or you can still find ways like to heal different versions of this. But I feel like I did a lot of this healing when I moved to Maine, actually. And there's actually so many stories that I could give about that process and what that was like, and what, I guess like very literally having to not listen to certain people in my life, because of their well-meaning doubts. And, so anyway, I actually wrote a love letter to Maine that describes my time living in Maine, and kind of describes some of like actually the healing that I experienced And I'm going to share that. I'm actually going to create a playlist that has things that I've written, things that look, if I really enjoy these open mics, I will make YouTube my own open mic whenever I feel like it. And I will start sharing the things that I write here, and I'll make another playlist called Writings. Because usually I call them blurbs. But this specifically is a love letter that I wrote to Maine when I left Maine. And yeah, I'll share it with you guys. But it definitely has this kind of theme to it, which is what made me think of it now. Okay, I'll get back into this. So blocked creatives are easily manipulated by guilt. Our friends, feeling abandoned by our departure from the ranks of the blocked, may unconsciously try to guilt trip us into giving up our newly healthy habits. It is very important to understand that the time given to morning pages is time between you and God. You best know your answers. You will be led to new sources of support as you begin to support yourself. Be very careful to safeguard your newly recovering artist. Often creativity is blocked by our falling in with other people's plans for us. We want to set aside time for our creative work, but we feel we should do something else instead. As blocked creatives, we focus not on our responsibilities to ourselves, but on our responsibilities to others. We tend to think such behavior makes us good people. It doesn't. It makes us frustrated people. The essential element in nurturing our creativity lies in nurturing ourselves. Through self-nurturance, we nurture our inner connection to the great creator. Through this connection, our creativity will unfold. Paths will appear before us. We need to trust the great creator and move out in faith. It's crazy. I was talking a lot about taking this leap of faith. This is actually this idea of a leap of faith and like putting in actions and not quite knowing where the actions will lead, but still continuing to put in the actions has been the leap of faith from my week 1 that I've really been focusing on and have started to make a practice actually. So she says, repeat. The great creator has gifted us with creativity. Our gift back is our use of it. Do not let friends squander your time. Be gentle but firm and hang tough. The best thing you can do for your friends is to be an example through your own recovery. I'm going to repeat that again. This is huge because I think a lot of times when we start to recover, actually my friend and I were talking about this. It's so easy. It's so much easier to go and like yap about it. And I actually think about this for like any person who is like super excited about anything, but also especially like somebody who is like newly, like in a new religion that is like really helping them, or a new philosophy that they really like, and immediately they want to go and tell everyone about it. And it's like sometimes that is helpful to people, but more often than not, it is through living in whatever is actually helping you that inspires the people around you. So I'm going to read this one more time. The best thing you can do for your friends is to be an example through your own recovery. Do not let their fears and second thoughts derail you. Soon enough, the techniques you learn will enable you to teach others. Soon enough, you will be a bridge that will allow others to cross over from self-doubt into self-expression. For right now, protect your artist by refusing to show your morning pages to interested bystanders or to share your artist date with friends. Hey guys, as I shared my artist date with you guys. Well, I guess I didn't take you along on the artist date. The artist date was for me, and I told you about it. Draw a sacred circle around your recovery and give yourself the gift of faith. That's beautiful. I'm going to say that one more time. Give yourself the gift of faith. Trust that you are on the right track. You are. As your recovery progresses, you will come to experience a more comfortable faith in your creator and your creator within. You will learn that it is actually easier to write than not write, paint than not paint, and so forth. You will learn to enjoy the process of being a creative channel and to surrender your need to control the result. You will discover the joy of practicing your creativity. The process, not the product, will become your focus. Your own healing is the greatest message of hope for others. That's beautiful. So the next section she calls Crazy Makers. And this is fun. This is kind of a fun section. So Crazy Makers. A related thing creatives do to avoid being creative is to involve themselves with crazy makers. Crazy makers are those personalities that create storm centers. They are often charismatic, frequently charming, highly inventive, and powerfully persuasive. And for the creative person in their vicinity, they are enormously destructive. You know the type. Charismatic but out of control, long on problems and short on solutions, crazy makers are the kind of people who can take over your whole life. To fixer-uppers, they are irresistible. So much to change, so many distractions. If you are involved with a crazy maker, you probably know it already. And you certainly recognize the thumbnail description in the paragraph above. Crazy makers like drama. If they can swing it, they are the star. Everyone around them functions as supporting cast, picking up their cues, their entrances and exits from the crazy maker's crazy whims. Some of the most profoundly destructive crazy makers I have ever encountered are themselves famous artists. They are the kind of artists that give the rest of us bad names. Often larger than life, they acquire that status by feeding on the life energies of those around them. For this reason, many of the most crazy artists in America are found surrounded by a cadre of supporters as talented as they are, but determined to subvert their own talent in the service of the crazy-making king. I'm thinking of a movie set I visited several years ago. The filmmaker was one of the giants of American cinema. His stature was unmistakable, and so was his identity as a crazy maker. Given that all filmmaking is demanding, his sets are far more so. Longer hours, long bouts of paranoia, intrigue, and internecine politics. Amid rumors that the set was bugged, this crazy maker king addressed his actors over a loudspeaker system while he, like the Wizard of Oz, secreted himself away in a large and luxuriously equipped trailer cave. Over the past 2 decades, I have watched many directors at work. I was married to a profoundly gifted director, and I have directed a feature myself. I've often remarked how closely a film crew resembles an extended family. In the case of this crazy-making king, the crew resembled nothing so much as an alcoholic family. The alcoholic drinker, thinker, surrounded by his tiptoeing enablers, all pretending that his outsized ego and its concomitant demands were normal. On that crazy maker set, the production lurched off schedule and over budget from King Baby's unreasonable demands, my bad. A film crew is essentially a crew of experts, and to watch these estimable experts become disheartened was a strong lesson for me in the poisonous power of crazy making. Brilliant set designers, costume designers, sound engineers, not to mention actors, became increasingly injured as the production ran its devastating course. It was against the crazy-making director's personal dramas that they struggled to create the drama that was meant to go on screen. Like all good movie people, this crew was willing to work long hours for good work. What discouraged them was working those hours in the service of ego instead of art. Relatable. On all fronts, I think in any career anybody's ever been in, relatable. But I'm sure even more so there. The crazy-making dynamic is grounded in power. And so any group of people can function as an energy system to be exploited and drained. Crazy makers can be found in almost any setting, in almost any art form. Fame may help to create them, but since they feed on power, any power source will do. Although quite frequently, crazy makers are found among the rich and famous, they are common even among commoners. Right? In the nuclear family, there's a reason we use that word. A resident crazy maker may often be found pitting family member against family member, undercutting anyone's agenda but his or her own. I am thinking now of a destructive matriarch of my acquaintance. The titular head of a large and talented clan, she has devoted her extensive energies to destroying the creativity of her children. Always choosing critical moments for her sabotage, she plants her bombs to explode just as her children approach success. The daughter, struggling to finish a belated college degree, finds herself saddled with a sudden drama the night before her final exam. The son, with a critical job interview, is gifted with a visitation just when he needs to focus the most. "Do you know what the neighbors are saying about you?" the crazy maker will often ask. And the beleaguered student mother will hear a horrific round of gossip that leaves her battered, facing her exam week beset by feelings of what's the use? Do you realize you're ruining your own marriage with this possible new job? And the son's hopeful career move is ashes before it begins. Whether they appear as your overbearing mother, your manic boss, your needy friend, or your stubborn spouse, the crazy makers in your life share certain destructive patterns that make them poisonous for any sustained creative work. Crazy makers break deals and destroy schedules. They show up 2 days early for your wedding and expect to be waited on hand and foot. They rent a vacation cabin larger and more expensive than the one agreed upon, and then they expect you to foot the bill. Crazy makers expect special treatment. They suffer a wide panoply of mysterious ailments that require care and attention whenever you have a deadline looming, and anything else that draws your attention from the crazy maker's demands. The crazy maker cooks her own special meal in a house full of hungry children and does nothing to feed the kids. The crazy maker is too upset to drive right after he has vented enormous verbal abuse on the heads of those around him. I'm afraid Daddy will have a heart attack, the victim starts thinking, instead of, how do I get this monster out of my house? Crazy makers discount your reality. No matter how important your deadline or how critical your work trajectory at the moment, crazy makers will violate your needs. They may act as though they hear your boundaries and will respect them, but in practice, act is the operative word. Crazy makers are the people who call you at midnight or 6 a.m. saying, I know you asked me not to call you at this time, but... Crazy makers are the people who drop by unexpectedly to borrow something you can't find or don't want to lend them. Even better, they call and ask you to locate something they need, then fail to pick it up. I know you're on a deadline, they say, but this will only take a minute. Your minute. Crazy makers spend your time and money. If they borrow your car, they return it late with an empty tank. Their travel arrangements always cost you time or money. They demand to be met in the middle of your workday at an airport miles from town. I didn't bring taxi money, they say when confronted with, but I'm working. Crazy makers triangulate those they deal with. Because crazy makers thrive on energy, your energy, they set people against one another in order to maintain their own power position dead center. That's where they can feed most directly on the negative energies they stir up. So-and-so was telling me you didn't get to work on time today, a crazy maker may say. You obligingly get mad at so-and-so and miss the fact that the crazy maker has used hearsay to set you off kilter emotionally. Crazy makers are expert blamers. Nothing that goes wrong is ever their fault. And to hear them tell it, the fault is usually yours. If you hadn't cashed that child support check, it would never have bounced. One crazy-making ex-husband told his struggling for serenity former spouse. Crazy makers create dramas, but seldom where they belong. Crazy makers are often blocked creatives themselves. Afraid to effectively tap their own creativity, they are loath to allow that same creativity in others. It makes them jealous. It makes them threatened. It makes them dramatic at your expense. Devoted to their own agenda, crazy makers impose these agendas on others. In dealing with a crazy maker, you are dealing always with the famous issue of figure and ground. In other words, whatever matters to you becomes trivialized into mere backup for the crazy maker's personal plight. Do you think he or she loves me? They call to ask you when you are trying to pass your bar exam or get your husband home from the hospital. Crazy makers hate schedules, except their own. In the hands of a crazy maker, time is a primary tool for abuse. If you claim a certain block of time as your own, your crazy maker will find a way to fight you for that time, to mysteriously need things, meaning you. Just when you need to be alone and focused on the task at hand. I stayed up until 3 last night. I can't drive the kids to school. The crazy maker will spring on the morning you yourself must leave early for a business breakfast with your boss. Crazy makers hate order. Chaos serves their purposes. When you begin to establish a place that serves you and your creativity, your crazy maker will abruptly invade that space with projects of his or her own. What are all these papers, all this laundry on top of my work table, you ask? I decided to sort my college papers, to start looking for the matches for my socks. Crazy makers deny that they are crazy makers. They go for the jugular. I am not what's making you crazy, your crazy maker may say when you point out a broken promise or a piece of sabotage. It's just that we have such a rotten sex life. If crazy makers are that destructive, what are we doing involved with them? The answer, to be brief but brutal, is that we're that crazy ourselves. And we are that self-destructive. Really? Yes. As blocked creatives, we are willing to go to almost any lengths to remain blocked. As frightening and abusive as life with the crazy maker is, we find it far less threatening than the challenge of a creative life of our own. What would happen then? What would we be like? Very often, we fear that if we let ourselves be creative, we will become crazy makers ourselves and abuse those around us. Using this fear as our excuse, we continue to allow others to abuse us. If you are involved now with a crazy maker, it is very important that you admit this fact. Admit that you are being used, and admit that you are using your own abuser. Your crazy maker is a block you choose yourself to deter you from your own trajectory. As much as you are being exploited by your crazy maker, you too are using that person to block your creative flow. If you are involved in a tortured tango with a crazy maker, stop dancing to his or her tune. Pick up a book on codependency or get yourself to a 12-step program for relationship addiction. Al-Anon, I think that's for Alcoholic Anonymous. I don't know. Al-Anon and Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous are two excellent programs for stopping the crazy maker's dance. The next time you catch yourself saying or thinking, he or she's driving me crazy, ask yourself what creative work you are trying to block by your involvement. Honestly, no comments needed for that. She explained herself perfectly. So we're just going to go into the next section. The next section, skepticism. Now that we have talked about the barrier to recovery others can present, let us take a look at the inner enemy we harbor ourselves. Perhaps the greatest barrier for any of us as we look for an expanded life is our own deeply held skepticism. This is so crucial. This is so important. And you know what's so interesting is we think of skepticism as something that is like very healthy for us. Like, oh, we even talk about a healthy level of skepticism. Now, I do want to say, like, yeah, maybe don't be completely green to like everything that comes by and like take everything that is said to you. But a lot of times we use skepticism as like a scapegoat or as a way out of actually believing that anything could be good or change or be real. So anyway, let's see what she says. This might be called the secret doubt. What was I just saying? Okay. It does not seem to matter whether we are officially believers or agnostics. We have our doubts about all of this creativity stuff. And those doubts are very powerful. Unless we air them, they can sabotage us. Many times in trying to be good sports, we stuff our feelings of doubt. We need to stop doing that and explore them instead. Boiled down to their essentials, the doubts go something like this. Okay, so I started writing the morning pages and I seem more awake and alert in my life. So what? It's just a coincidence. Okay, so I have started filling the well and taking my artist on a date, and I do notice I am cheering up a little. So what? It's just coincidental. Okay, so now I am beginning to notice that the more I let myself explore the possibility of there being some power for good, the more I notice lucky coincidence turning up in my life. So what? I can't believe I am really being led. That's just too weird. The reason we think it's weird to imagine an unseen helping hand is that we still doubt that it's okay for us to be creative. With this attitude firmly entrenched, we not only look all gift horses in the mouth, but also swat them on the rump to get them out of our lives as fast as possible. When Mike began his creative recovery, he let himself admit that he wanted to make films. 2 weeks later, through a series of coincidences, he found himself in film school with his company paying for it. Did he relax and enjoy this? No. He told himself that film school was distracting him from his real job or of finding another job. So he gave up filmmaking to look for another job. 2 years later, remembering this incident, Mike can shake his head at himself. When the universe gave him what he wanted, he gave the gift right back. Eventually, he did let himself learn filmmaking, but he made it a lot harder on himself than the universe may have intended. One of the things most worth noting in a creative recovery is our reluctance to take seriously the possibility that the universe just might be cooperating with our new and expanded plans. Yes, we've gotten brave enough to try recovery, but we don't want the universe to really pay attention. We still feel too much like frauds to handle some success. When it comes, we want to go. Of course we do. Any little bit of experimenting and self-nurturance is very frightening for most of us. When our little experiment provokes the universe to open a door or two, we start shying away. Hey, you, whatever you are, not so fast. I like to think of the mind as a room. In that room, we keep all of our usual ideas about life, God, what's possible and what's not. The room has a door. The door is ever so slightly ajar, and outside we can see a great deal of dazzling light. out there in the dazzling light are a lot of new ideas that we consider too far out for us. And so we keep them out there. The ideas we are comfortable with are in the room with us. The other ideas are out, and we keep them out. In our ordinary pre-recovery life, when we would hear something weird or threatening, we'd just grab the doorknob and pull the door shut. Fast. Inner work triggering outer change? Ridiculous. Slam the door. God bothering to help my own creative recovery? Slam. Synchronicity supporting my artist with serendipitous coincidences? Slam, slam, slam. Now that we are in creative recovery, there is another approach we need to try. To do this, we gently set aside our skepticism for later use if we need it. And when a weird idea or coincidence whizzes by, we gently nudge the door a little further open. Setting skepticism aside, even briefly, can make for very interesting explorations. In creative recovery, it is not necessary that we change any of our beliefs. It is necessary that we examine them. I'm going to repeat that because that feels huge. Okay. In creative recovery, it is not necessary that we change any of our beliefs. It is necessary that we examine them. Chef's kiss. Love that. More than anything else, creative recovery is an exercise in open-mindedness. Again, picture your mind as that room with the door slightly ajar. Nudging the door open a bit more is what makes for open-mindedness. Begin this week to consciously practice opening your mind. Love, 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 love. The next section she calls attention. So, and I believe this is the last section, and then we'll get into, she has some like rules of the road. We'll get into that, okay? But this is the last section. It's called attention. Very often, a creative block manifests itself as an addiction to fantasy. Rather than working or living the now. I'm going to try that again. Okay. Rather than working or living the now, we spin our wheels and indulge in daydreams of could have, would have, should have. One of the great misconceptions about the artistic life is that it entails great swaths of aimlessness. The truth is that a creative life involves great swaths of attention. Attention is a way to connect and survive. I think I talk about this in the check-in from week 1. But I talk about how like the mundane. Actually, I talk about the mundane, and being able to pay attention to the mundane is actually what adds so much more magic to life. Okay, anyway, we'll just get into what she says. Flora and fauna reports I used to call the long, winding letters from my grandmother. The forsythia is starting, and this morning I saw my first robin. The roses are holding even in this heat. The sumac has turned, and that little maple down by the mailbox. My Christmas cactus is getting ready. I followed my grandmother's life like a long home movie. A shot of this and a shot of that, spliced together with no pattern that I could ever see. Dad's cough is getting worse. The little Shetland looks like she'll drop her foal early. Joanne is back in the hospital at Anna. We named the new boxer Trixie, and she likes to sleep in my cactus bed. Can you imagine? I could imagine. Her letters made that easy. Life through Grandma's eyes were a series of small miracles. The wild tiger lilies under the cottonwoods in June, the quick lizards scooting under the gray river rock she admired for its satiny finish. Her letters clocked the seasons of the year and her life. She lived until she was 80, and the letters came until the very end. When she died, it was as suddenly as her Christmas cactus, here today, gone tomorrow. She left behind her letters and her husband of 62 years. Her husband, my grandfather, Daddy Howard, an elegant rascal with a gambler's smile and a loser's luck, had made and lost several fortunes, and last of them permanently. He drank them away, gambled them away, tossed them away the way she threw crumbs to her birds. He squandered life's big chances the way she savored the small ones. That man, my mother would say. My grandmother lived with that man in tiled Spanish houses, in trailers, in a tiny cabin halfway up a mountain, in a railroad flat, and finally in a house made out of ticky-tacky where they all looked just the same. I don't know how she stands it, my mother would say, furious with my grandfather for some new misadventure. She meant she didn't know why. The truth is, we all knew how she stood it. She stood it by standing knee-deep in the flow of life and paying close attention. My grandmother was gone before I learned the lesson her letters were teaching. Survival lies in sanity, and sanity lies in paying attention. I'm going to read that again. There's a lot of wisdom in that. This feels like one of those sentences that maybe it's best like taken and then just like letting it stew in you. Like a sentence that you come back to and like try it on for size every now and then. So survival lies in sanity, and sanity lies in paying attention. Yes, her letter said, Dad's cough is getting worse. We have lost the house. There is no money and no work, but the tiger lilies are blooming. The lizard has found that spot of sun the roses are holding despite the heat. My grandmother knew what a painful life had taught her. Success or failure, the truth of a life really has little to do with its quality. The quality of life is in proportion, always, to the capacity for delight. The capacity for delight is the gift of paying attention. In a year when a long and rewarding love affair was lurching gracelessly away from the center of her life, the writer May Sarton kept a journal of a solitude. In it, she records coming home from a particularly painful weekend with her lover. Entering her empty house, I was stopped by the threshold of my study by a ray on a Korean chrysanthemum, lighting it up like a spotlight, deep red petals and Chinese yellow center. Seeing it was like getting a transfusion of autumn light. It's no accident that May Sarton uses the word transfusion. The loss of her lover was a wound in her